Welcome to Kitchen Table Conversations, a series of short and shareable conversation starters for those of us who have or love and support people with a complicated and beautiful brain. Here's your host, Angela Geddes.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Kitchen Table Conversations. If this is the first time tuning in, thanks so much for taking a chance on us. Let us know what you think. Always happy to hear your feedback, guys. It means so much to us to know that some of these things are resonating with you, and you guys value the importance of a kitchen table debate and a really important kitchen table conversations where we can clarify some myths and maybe nurture some further understanding. So today I'm happy to announce, I'm just so proud of this latest project. We've just completed a third book in a series and my fourth book overall called Not Your Typical Growing Up and Adulting Guide. And this book was written for people with a complicated and beautiful brain. So individuals who may be experiencing fairly intense symptoms that come with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe some learning differences, maybe some personality stuff, and of course, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So the purpose of this book was to speak directly to the individuals who experienced the impacts of these symptoms and challenges on the daily. And I really feel like, I am a social worker in private practice. I've mentioned many times that I've done a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of, academic learning. But the most meaningful learning that I continue to engage in is within my office walls and hearing directly from individuals who are experiencing some of these intense symptoms and challenges. So we learn together, and, I am learning, and when you start having conversations that are very similar and that are hitting home with people on a fairly regular basis, that kind of is my cue to say, some resources need to be developed, and this is where this book came from. I wanted to really help people feel like they're understood. I know that many of the people that I support feel not that on a regular basis. And, they live with very puzzling challenges and symptoms that they kind of have to navigate on their own. And I felt like this book would be really helpful to have for them to read, to see themselves within the pages, to develop some further understanding, to know that they're not alone, and to have some concrete examples of how creating some boundaries and some rules for ourselves and to engage in the kind of supports that we need in order to live our best life will definitely improve our outcomes and help us to feel a little bit better. I often say that we all need helpers. None of us should do this big old life all by ourselves, but some people do, unfortunately. So this book also talks about the importance of developing a trusted circle of support, and sometimes trust isn't that easy for people who have been misunderstood or mistreated. And when perception is different, then that can kind of perpetuate some of these feelings and take us in directions that we don't really want to go. So this is another episode of a deep dive where we have an interview with a couple of folks that really tease out some of the main points that come from this book. And we don't have an audio version of it yet, but this is something that can be listened to by, again, individuals with a complicated and beautiful brain and those who love and support them. So I hope that you enjoy, and as always, look forward to your feedback. Let's begin with the deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we are wading into some water that I think is going to feel incredibly familiar to a lot of you. Okay. And when I say water, I don't mean, a calm, relaxing pool. I'm talking about a river where the current is strong, the map is missing, and you feel like you're just paddling for your life to stay in the exact same spot.
That is a very specific and, frankly, an exhausting image to start with.
It is, but it's the central image of the book we're unpacking today, and honestly, it's what stuck with me the most. We're doing a deep dive into not your typical growing up and adulting guide by Angela Geddes.
Right.
And right off the bat, I want to clear something up. The title says growing up, so you might think, oh, this is for teenagers. But reading this, I just kept thinking, this is a survival guide for a specific type of human operating system, no matter how old you are.
That's a great way to put it. Geddes is focusing on neurodevelopmental differences. So we're talking about ADHD, autism, FASD, that's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
And trauma, too.
And the long-term impacts of early trauma. Yeah. But you're right, this isn't some dense medical textbook. Yeah. She's a therapist. She's been in the trenches for over 30 years, and she's writing directly to the person inside that experience.
And the mission here feels kind of radical, actually, compared to a lot of self-help anyway. The goal is usually fix yourself.
Oh, absolutely. 10 steps to stop being distracted.
Exactly. How to crush your to-do list. But Geddes seems to be saying that trying to fix these brains is, well, it's actually the root of the problem.
That's it. She starts with this whole concept that reframes the entire conversation, the complicated and beautiful brain.
I love that phrase.
It's a shift from a deficit model, what's wrong with you, what's broken to, a model of understanding. Her whole point is that people with these profiles aren't broken versions of normal people.
They're just different.
They are functioning exactly as their biology dictates. They don't need fixing. They need protection, tools, and dignity.
I want to dig into that biology part for a second because, in the culture we hear people dismiss this stuff as lack of discipline or laziness.
Or just a bad personality trait.
Right. But Geddes is really firm on the science here. This is not an attitude problem.
Not at all. She lists the factors that actually wire the brain this way. Prenatal exposure to substances, genetics, early trauma, environmental stress. These are not choices. They're structural chemical realities. That's why she uses the term neurodevelopmental. The nervous system itself just took a different path.
So when someone with this wiring, say, struggles with impulse control or they forget what you just told them 5 seconds ago, it's not a moral failing.
It's hardware reality.
Yeah.
Precisely. And that distinction is everything.
How so?
Well, if you believe your struggle is a moral failing, you feel shame. And what does shame do? It shuts you down. But if you understand it's a neurological reality, now you can look for a strategy. You can stop beating yourself up and start solving the problem.
She gives some really visceral examples of what this looks like from the inside. And I have to say, even without a formal diagnosis, I felt really seen by some of them. She talks about blank moments.
The blank moment.
Yeah.
It's terrifying when you think about it. It's that split second where the memory or the instruction it vanishes.
Just run.
Not that you weren't listening. It's that the bridge between hearing it and doing it just collapsed. You're standing there, and the file is just empty.
And then there are the internal storms.
Right. Emotional dysregulation. For a neurotypical brain, frustration might feel like a wave. It rises, it crests, it falls. You can kind of ride it out.
Yeah.
For a neurodivergent brain, especially one affected by FASD or trauma, it can feel like a tsunami.
Yeah.
It hits fast, it's completely overwhelming, and the logical part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, it literally goes offline.
That's a scary thought, your logic just going offline. My favorite description she uses, though, is when your mouth moves faster than your reasoning.
I think we've all had a little taste of that one.
Oh, absolutely. But for the people she's writing for, this is chronic. It's constant. And she really highlights the tragedy of good intentions. It really struck me. You have this person who wants to do the right thing.
They want to remember. They want to be on time.
But the execution just fails. And that gap between what you intended and what you did, that's where the trauma lives. You say, I didn't mean to, and the world says, I don't care, you still did it.
And over time, that creates this deep-seated belief that you are bad. Because the evidence, your mistakes, it keeps piling up, even if your heart was in the right place.
Okay, so that brings us to the core strategy of the book. And I have to be honest, when I first read the word, I bristled. The word is surrender.
It's a loaded word, isn't it?
It is. I mean, in our culture, surrender is losing. It's waving the white flag. It's admitting defeat. If I'm struggling, I want to conquer it. I want to hack my brain. I do not want to surrender to it.
And that reaction is exactly why so many people burn themselves out. Geddes totally anticipates that pushback.
Yeah.
She redefines surrender completely.
What's her definition?
She says, acceptance is not giving up. It is the moment we stop fighting our reality and start working with it.
And this is where that canoe analogy comes back in, right? because I think this visual really helps explain the difference between giving up and surrendering.
It does. Okay, so picture yourself in a canoe on a river. The current of that river. That's your neurology. It's the way your brain naturally flows.
Right. The path of least resistance for your brain.
Exactly. Now, scenario A is what most of us try to do. We paddle upstream, we fight the current, we say, I should be able to focus for 8 hours, or I should be able to handle this loud party.
And you're paddling harder and harder, you're sweating, you're exhausted, you're putting in just maximum effort.
Maximum effort. And you get completely worn out, you look at the shore, and you haven't moved an inch.
Yeah.
You might even be drifting backward. That is the definition of fighting your wiring.
You're using 100% of your energy just to mask who you are.
And you have zero energy left to actually live.
So what's scenario B? What does turning the canoe around look like? Because, I mean, if the current is heading toward a waterfall, you don't just go with it.
Well, the current isn't necessarily a waterfall, it's just a direction. Turning the canoe around means you acknowledge the current. You say, okay, I have a brain that doesn't hold short-term memories well. That is the river I am on.
So surrendering isn't saying, oh, well, guess I'll just forget everything.
No, surrendering is saying, I will stop pretending I can remember things using just my brain, and I will start using an external brain, a notebook, an app, an alarm, a friend.
So it's about strategic acceptance. It sounds like stopping their reliance on willpower for things that are actually biological.
Bingo. Willpower is finite. If you use all of it just trying to sit still, you have none left for anything else. Surrender is admitting the limitation so you can solve the problem a different way. It's choosing a different way to win.
Choosing a different way to win. I like that. That moves it from a defeat to a pivot.
Exactly. If you know you get overwhelmed in busy places, that's the current. Fighting it is forcing yourself to go to the mall on a Saturday, having a meltdown, and then hating yourself for it.
Yay.
Surrendering is going on a Tuesday morning when it's quiet. Or wearing noise-canceling headphones. You still get the shopping done, you still win, but you did it by working with your brain, not against it.
But doing that requires admitting you're struggling. And Geddes spends a lot of time on why that is so hard. She calls it the invisible effort.
Oh, this is huge, because so much of this is invisible. If you had a broken leg, nobody would ask you to run a marathon.
No, they'd hold the door for you.
Right. But because your broken leg is dopamine deficiency or processing disorder, people just see you sitting there. They assume you're lazy or unmotivated.
She lists these invisible weights. The mental exhaustion of just trying to pass as normal, the sensory overwhelm like the lights are too bright or the tag on your shirt feels like sandpaper, and the pressure to act your age.
That act your age thing is crushing. Geddes uses the term dysmaturity, especially for people with FASD or trauma. It means, you might be 25 chronologically, but emotionally, or in terms of executive function, you might be operating more like a 15-year-old in some situations.
And society judges you by the calendar, not by your capability.
And that leads to shame. And shame, for Geddes, is the ultimate enemy.
Why shame specifically?
Because shame makes you hide. If you're ashamed of your struggle, you don't ask for help. You don't want to be exposed. And if you don't get help, you don't get tools. It's a vicious cycle.
So how do you break it?
She introduces this really nuanced concept, the distinction between fault and responsibility.
This was the part of the book I found most challenging, but also the most important. It's a really tough needle to thread. She says, your symptoms are not your fault, but you still need and deserve tools to manage them.
And then she hits you with the line, intentions matter, but they don't erase consequences. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's incredibly empowering. Yeah. It means you did not choose your genetics. You didn't choose your prenatal history. You are not at fault for having a brain that struggles with impulse control.
You didn't break your own brain.
You are the one living your life. And if your wiring causes you to hurt someone or break a law or lose your job, you are the one who bears that consequence.
She uses a really stark example for this, and I want to unpack it because it sounds controversial.
Sure.
She talks about accidental shoplifting.
Right.
Now, my first reaction is, wait a minute, shoplifting is a choice. You walk in, you take something, you leave without paying. How is that an accident?
It sounds impossible to a neurotypical brain.
Yeah.
But let's walk through it. Imagine a brain with severe ADHD or FASD. You walk into a store, you are immediately overstimulated. Bright lights, loud music, you pick up an item you need, then your phone buzzes, distraction, your anxiety spikes. You feel this sudden, urgent need to leave.
Just to escape the noise.
Right. And you walk out. The cognitive step of paying for the item never even fired. It wasn't a calculated theft. It was a collision of symptoms: sensory overload, poor working memory, and impulsivity.
So the intention to steal was zero.
Zero. But to the security guard and to the police, the action was theft. The consequence is an arrest.
So how does surrender apply there? You can't just tell the police, oh, I surrendered to my brain, it's okay.
No, absolutely not. Surrender here means accepting that going into a busy store alone is a high-risk activity for you. It means accepting your brain is unreliable in that specific environment.
So the responsibility part is creating a safety plan.
Exactly. You make a rule. I do not go shopping without a helper who can double-check that I've paid. It hurts the ego, for sure. It's admitting you can't do something everyone else can. But the alternative is risking a criminal record. It's choosing safety over the illusion of independence.
This leads us perfectly into rules. Now, if you tell a teenager, or frankly me, that I need more rules, my first instinct is to roll my eyes. We think of them as things that restrict our freedom.
We do. But Geddes reframes rules completely. She doesn't call them control. She calls them protection. She says rules are compassion in action.
Compassion in action. That is such a different way of looking at it. How does that work?
Well, if you accept that your brain has these vulnerabilities, the blank moments, the impulse control, then a rule isn't a cage. It's a safety harness. It lets you exist in the world without crashing.
She talks about specific vulnerabilities that need these rules. One of them is love blindness, and this one felt particularly poignant.
It's very common. Many neurodivergent brains are they're dopamine seeking. Connection feels good. Trust feels good. Being liked feels amazing.
So they dive in head first.
Exactly. Their brain is screaming, yes, this feels amazing. And they might miss the red flags. A neurotypical brain would spot danger, manipulation, insincerity. They're blind to the risk because that chemical reward of connection is just so loud.
So what's the rule for that? How do you protect yourself from your own brain chemistry?
The rule she suggests, and this is a tough one for modern dating, is waiting 3 to 6 months before sexual intimacy.
Wow. 3 to 6 months. I mean, in today's world, that's a lifetime.
It sounds almost Victorian, I know. But look at the logic. It's not about morality. It's not about being a prude. It's about data collection.
Data collection.
It's about buying your brain enough time to come down from that initial dopamine high so you can actually assess the person. Is this person safe? Are they respectful? Are they consistent? If you jump in right away, your brain chemistry bonds you to them before you even know if they're trustworthy. The rule is a buffer.
It's protecting your heart, because your brain's danger sensor might be a little slow to activate.
Exactly. You're outsourcing the judgment to the calendar because you know your feelings might lead you astray in the moment.
And she applies this to screens and substances too. And again, it's that dopamine craving, isn't it?
It's all about the dopamine. She calls it dopamine sensitivity. These brains are often starved for stimulation. A screen, a video game, alcohol, sugar, they provide an immediate, reliable hit of it.
So the slippery slope is just much steeper.
Much steeper. The path to addiction is shorter. So the rule might be no phone in the bedroom, ever. Not because you're a child who can't be trusted, but because your brain needs that physical barrier to help it switch off. If the phone is there, the brain will use it. It's a physiological certainty.
And this brings up what she calls the helper. Because enforcing these rules on yourself is incredibly hard if your executive function, the part of your brain that makes good decisions, is already shaky.
This is a crucial concept. Geddes wants to normalize the idea of the helper. We have this idea that growing up means doing everything by yourself, that independence means solo.
Right.
And she pushes back on that hard. She points out that successful people, CEOs, athletes, they all have teams. They have assistants, coaches, trainers.
Nobody expects a CEO to manage their own calendar and file their own taxes and clean their own office.
Exactly. But we expect someone with executive dysfunction to do all of that and more without any support. Geddes says asking for help, identifying a helper, is a sign of maturity, not weakness.
It's like treating the helper as a prosthetic. Like glasses. You wouldn't say, I'm going to try really hard to see without my glasses today to prove I'm an adult. That's ridiculous.
That's it. And she notes that for neurodivergent individuals, they might need these helpers more consistently and for longer into adulthood. And that is okay. The goal is a functioning life, not a solo life.
She wraps this all up with a motto that I think should be on a t-shirt. Support without shame is best for my brain.
It really captures the essence, doesn't it? If you have the support, the rules, the helpers, but you feel ashamed of needing them, they won't work. You'll resent the helper. You break the rules just to prove you don't need them. You have to remove the shame to let the support actually function.
So we've talked about the canoe, the rules, the helpers. As we wrap up, I want to leave listeners with the final image Geddes uses.
We usually view life as a highway, right?
Right. A highway is linear. You start here, you hit these mile markers, school, job, marriage, and you drive the speed limit. It's paved, it's predictable.
But she says these brains aren't built for the highway. They are a forest. A forest is a completely different ecosystem. It's wilder. It's not linear. There are twists and hidden trails, sudden storms, fallen trees you have to navigate.
But there's also deep intuition and creativity and beauty in a forest that you don't find on a highway.
The problem arises when you try to drive a sedan through a forest.
You're going to crash. You're going to get stuck. You're going to ruin the car.
If your life is a forest, you need a different mode of transport. You need a compass, not a GPS. You need a guide, not a traffic cop.
And you have to accept that you might arrive at the destination later or by a completely different route than the people on the highway.
And you might end up at a totally different destination, one that actually suits you better. The goal, as she says over and over, isn't to grow out of your brain. That's the great myth, that if you just try hard enough, you'll eventually wake up neurotypical.
Like you can just adult your way out of autism or focus your way out of ADHD.
It doesn't happen. The goal is to build a life that fits the brain you actually have, to create an environment where that forest is safe and explorable instead of scary and overwhelming. It shifts the burden from changing who you are to changing how you live.
It's permission to stop fighting a war against yourself. And I think for anyone who felt that exhaustion we talked about at the beginning, that permission is life-changing.
It is. It's the difference between barely surviving and actually thriving.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. We've covered a lot of ground, but I want to go all the way back to that river.
The current.
Listener, think about your life right now. Can you identify one current you have been paddling against? What is one area where you are exhausted from trying to do it the normal way, the way you think you should?
Maybe it's your morning routine. Maybe it's social events. Maybe it's how you try to remember your tasks.
What would happen if, just for one day or for one task, you stopped paddling upstream? What if you turned the canoe around?
What would surrender look like in that one specific area? What rule or what helper could you put in place to just let the water support you?
It's a scary question, but it might just be the one that saves you from drowning. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.
Well, there you have it. There is a quick synopsis of the content of the book called Not Your Typical Growing Up and Adulting Guide. Check out my website for more details and how to get yourself a copy if that's something that you would like. Remembering that there's also a companion workbook that's meant for individuals with complicated and beautiful brains, and also there's sections in there to be completed if desired with people who love and support you. Again, anxious to hear your feedback. Thanks so much for tuning in. Angela.